Yes? Yeah. Things are changing, aren't they? Life, that's one constant. It's change, isn't it? The times there are changing. That's when that song will be relevant forever, I think, because things just are always changing. The times there are changing. And one of the lines in there sort of struck me. First, let me tell you a little story, about how things change. It has to do with the grandfather who took his grandson out to play golf, and they were playing a round of golf, and they got to this par 4 that had a dog leg. It was one of those things that curves, and it was you could see through the trees the green, that it wasn't that far away. And the grandfather says, when I was your age, I used to drive my ball over those trees and get on the green and won. And so the grandson decides that's what he's going to do, and he, squares up with the ball, and he takes a mighty whack, and it goes on up, and it's flying so beautiful and straight, but it catches a limb. It goes whack and falls to the ground. He got some good wood on that one. Anyway, so then the grandfather just looks at him and said, when I was your age, those trees were 10 feet tall. I was just thinking, when I was thinking about that this morning, I used to play, when I was 12 years old, I got my junior club card or whatever at Progress Downs, which is a public course outside of Beaverton, Oregon, which about a mile away I could walk to, carry my clubs and walk to the golf course. Back in the days when you could do that kind of stuff, right? I don't think they let 12-year-olds do that these days, but I can remember, it had all these. It was a brand new course. It wasn't, a couple of years old when I started playing on it, and all the trees were planted were, maybe 10 feet tall at the most. And I started thinking about if I were to go back today, a few years later, I'm sure those trees are not ones that I'd want to mess with anymore. Things just keep changing. Nothing ever stays the same. My son, youngest boy right now, what's today? Sunday. I guess they're returning today. They're down at our cabin at Cannon Beach in Oregon, a family cabin. My mother bought the property and the materials the summer I graduated from high school. And we spent a few years building it and have been enjoying it ever since. But he was down there on the beach and going for walks on the beach. And they had a minus 1.5 tide the other day, which was the lowest for this year, which is, I'm going to get back to that. But, so you go, you know how the tides work, right? You get a high of 2 or 3 feet, and then it goes down below zero. And last year when I was down there, I looked through the calendar for the whole year, and the lowest tide was a minus 1.7, which a little over 20 years ago when we moved here, I can remember going out and we had these minus 2.3 tides or 2.2 tides. So now, the lowest is, his lowest he saw was 1.5, and I saw minus 1.7. I think I'm getting hung up in the weeds here. Don't want you guys to get too bad. But what that means is, in the last 20-some years, the ocean has risen about 6 inches, 6 or 7 inches. So just in the period of time that I've been living in Michigan. And, it just continues. That line in here about admit that the waters around you have grown. When I opened this up the other day and I said, maybe I'll do this one. I said, that just speaks to me. About how things are changing, right? And I don't want to get caught up in the political roots of that, but it's happening. This is happening. And what do we do about it? What do we do about it for ourselves? Things are changing in our lives. We're going through stuff, right? I mean, stuff happens, and we have to participate in whatever's going on. Now, do we do it in fear and trembling? Do I do it with blaming or shaming? Right? Do I do it with acceptance? This is what's happening. And what is mine to do about it? If I'm going through a physical challenge or a financial challenge or a health challenge or a relationship challenge or just just wondering what the heck I'm going to do today, you know, kind of thing. What do I do? How do I face those challenges, if you will? How do we face those challenges? My title for today, I don't know if anybody is aware of it, is Perpetual Ecstasy. It comes from Charles Fillmore's book, Talks on Truth. And the subtitle is A New and Different Country. A new and different country. We're in a new and different country. It seems like, you know, all the time. It's constantly changing, and things are definitely changing right now. So what does that mean for us individually? Right? Do we like change, the change that's happening? Okay, go along with it. If you don't like it, what are you going to do about it? That's our opportunity to do something about it. To do something about how we're showing up to life. Not just to accept what's going on and get burdened down, and I have to do this, I have to do that, I get all caught up in do, right? We have to learn to be. You know, that's the ancient struggle between Plato and Aristotle. Plato was all about that our being or our doing comes out of our being, right? And then Aristotle was being comes out of doing. And then Frank Sinatra put it together and he said, "Dooby-dooby-doo, ah-dooby-dooby-doo." I haven't used that one for a while, so I've got to throw that in. How are we showing up to life? That's the important question. How am I showing up today? Because it's not what's going on out there. It's not what's going on with other people. It's not, you know, whether they're in your house or not. It's not what's going on in the government. It's not what's going on, you know, out on the streets. It's not what's going on in other countries. But it's what's going on in here, inside me, that makes a difference. That we are stronger than our circumstances. That we are greater than our circumstances. We're greater than the outer. Right? But that's not what we're taught in, you know, the newspapers and everything else. We're supposed to be this, that, and the other thing. Right? People tell us, why aren't you upset? Or why aren't you happy? Why aren't you this? Why aren't you that? Well, I am what I am. I am that I am. Tell them that I am has sent you. That's the name of God when Moses was speaking to the burning bush, right? Tell them that I am has sent you. I am that I am, or I will be what I am, right? Or I am what I am, and that's all that I am. That's the Popeye School of Metaphysics, by the way. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. Yeah, well, anyway. Throw a few of those out there. You know, I miss the low tides. That's something that, you know, there's a little rock that sticks out into the ocean. It's called Hug Point. It's a little south of our place. We can walk there on the beach. And at low tide, when it's a -2 or more, we can walk out around the rock on the sand. And that's where you find lots of sand dollars and other wonderful little shells and such. And it's got a carved shelf on it because in Oregon, one thing about Oregon is up to the high water mark is a roadway. It's public property. So in rivers and lakes and everything else, you know, they don't own the beaches. You know, around here you go so far and then you get to somebody's private property and you can't walk down the beach anymore, right? Well, in Oregon, you just keep going because it's all public property. Well, back in the early 1900s, they had these. Well, we have a picture of a Model T going around on the shelf, going around this rock. I mean, that used to be part of the highway down to Arch Cape, which is the next town south of there. That was before they built the road up in the hills there. And now, you can't walk around Hug Point anymore. That was very disappointing when I was down there last year. And last couple of years, I realized that, you know, of course, I don't walk that far. It's about a 6-mile walk from our cabin, so I don't do that as much as often as I used to. But we did walk down to Hug Point last year. And we're going there in October. We'll be there in October. Won't be here, sorry. in October. But what can we say about our lives, right? What can we say about our lives? How are we showing up today? That's my question for you right now. How are you showing up today? What experience are you having today? Right? We think about our lives. We look at a point in our lives. You know, what is Matthew? What is Betsy? What is Karen? Jackie? Everybody else here? Right? When we look at our lives, what is it? You know, you think of a rose. This is a great example. You think of a rose. Is it the seed? Is it the stem? Is it the thorn? Is it the leaves? Is it the petal? You know, the bud and then the bloom? Is it the aroma? It's not any one of those things. It's the whole experience of a rose. A rose is not just a flower. It's the whole experience of the plant and the garden, and everything's connected. Everything is part of everything else, right? Started off as a combination of a sperm and an egg and a zygote and a fetus, and growing into a baby and a toddler and what are the other stages? You know, basically growing up. What part? You know, those are still parts of us, even though we have outgrown those. That is still part of our experience, isn't it? And we're still carrying around the experiences that we had all along the way. Every teacher that did whatever they did, every parent that did whatever they did, every sibling that did whatever they did, every aunt and uncle and cousin and bully down the street or whatever, we're still carrying those scars. We're still carrying those experiences. That's still part of us. And how do we be all that we're created to be in the midst of all that garbage that has been laid upon us, right? You look outside at what's going out in the world, and you listen to the news channels, and whether you're right or left or center, you know, you're in a bubble, and you're hearing this and you're hearing that. Well, what is real? What is real? It's not what we're hearing on the news. That's not real. I mean, it's somebody's experience of what is real. It's not what I'm saying that is real. That's my experience of what is real. But what is real? What is real? If you put that together, it's Israel. Right? What's Israel? Israel is the expression of God. Isn't it? Charles Fillmore calls it the equivalent of the Christ in the New Testament. That Israel in the Old Testament is the equivalent of Christ in the New Testament. It's the Christ within us. That's what's real. That holy, perfect, sinless child of God in us is what is real. And that's what we're learning to experience and to express in our daily lives. I mentioned Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity. And this book talks on truth. That's my source this year for lessons and for my weekly prayer letter. I think I've mentioned before, I have some cards out on the counter out there. Peaceunity.net, PEACEUNITY.net. And I put out some of you are on the list that get the weekly email. And it's got quotes. And I'm using Charles Fillmore's book as a outline, if you will, and following through his book. And I also have quotes in there, Bible quotes, you know, from New and Old Testament, and then I'll have random quotes from people that happen to do with the particular subject that I'm on that week, and then Charles Fillmore and Rumi and Myrtle Fillmore, and who else I've got there? Joel Goldsmith, James Dillard Freeman. There's at least one more in there. About 9 different quotes each week that I put out. Could put out one a day, but I figure that's too many emails. I'll just give you one a week, right? One a week, and then you've got your quotes for the week that you can call upon. And I've got ministers who are on my list, and they've told me that they use those quotes on a weekly basis for their sermons, so that's great. Anyway, so here's Charles' book. He talks about the I am is always the same. Now, the I am is that Christ within us. I am that I am. Right? I am that I am. That's, when I say I am talking about my sense of being, who I think I am. And when it's like Charles did here, and it's all capitals, I am, that's the Christ within. Doesn't matter what you think about it. That's what is real. That is what is real. The I am is always the same. It doesn't change. Our reality doesn't change. I was once upon a time, when I was 16, I was in a car accident, lost the tips of these 2 fingers, and somewhere along the line I was at a healing fair, and they had this machine that was, what was it? You could see energy, basically. You could see the energy, and I put my hand under there, and it showed full fingers. So the energy for those fingers is still there, even though the tips are gone. Right? You talk about when people lose limbs and they have their phantom pains and such. That's because the energy is still there and it's still feeling things. The I am never changed. That perfect pattern of potential for being is within us now. And all it takes is turning to it and expressing it as best we can. Learning to get better and better as we go along. Your identity is preserved wherever you are, in the flesh or in spirit, but the 2 states are as distinct as America and Europe, right? Between the flesh and the spirit. We have a life of flesh, we have the physical world, we have to eat and do the things that we got to do, and then we have the spiritual world, which is what is real in the sense of everlasting, never ending. And both of those worlds need our attention. And they're distinct as America and Europe. When you're in Europe, you come into relation with people and surroundings quite different from those in America. So the one who has let go of the bonds of flesh and come into the things of spirit finds himself in a new and different country. That's where I got that line from, a new and different country. Think about it. Think back to your spiritual journey so far. Myself, this is a new and different country. I think I've shared the story about my father, who was very conservative, joined the Orthodox Church because the Episcopal Church was too liberal. And his minister, when my wife Kathy and I just said we were going off to Unity to become Unity ministers, he was upset. He was distraught. So he goes to his priest, and his priest gives him this, consolation to say, well, at least he's not a drug dealer. 2 things. First off, a Unity minister is a step above a drug dealer, and that was a real career option many, many years ago, long before that time. But anyway, that's enough about that. In the flesh, his sensation was turned outward toward feeling, and man was bound to the eternally rolling wheels of birth and death by physical generation. That's kind of the story of the Garden of Eden and the eating of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and they're explaining how we got here and that we're in the flesh even though we are spiritual beings. When he's born into the spirit, he cuts off the indulgence of the external and is delighted to learn that sensation finds an interior faculty through which it expresses itself in perpetual ecstasy. I love that so much. That's perpetual ecstasy. Does that sound like fun? Perpetual ecstasy? I'm not sure, because I haven't reached it yet. I haven't gotten there yet, but to think about that, to be feeling good all the time. Well, that's not going to happen in my fleshly body, is it? I've had too many sports injuries and car accidents and just falling off of ladders and everything else. that this body of mine takes a lot of attention, draws a lot of attention. So I don't think in the physical I'm going to experience that perpetual ecstasy, right? That's what we're chasing, though, isn't it? That's what that's one of those drugs, ecstasy, that I've heard about. Never got participated in it, but I heard about it, right? That sounds like a good one. Ecstasy, that's what we want. Well, this is perpetual ecstasy without chemicals. I've had a lot of spiritual experiences over the years, Some of them were chemically aligned, but most of them weren't. And every time I feel a little bit more connected, a little stronger in my being, who and what I am. Perpetual ecstasy. Another word for that is nirvana, or nibbana, depending on where in India you are. Samadhi, satori, bliss, heaven. That's what we're talking about. That's what those concepts are. That's what those about. Living in heaven. That's what the book of Revelation is all about. Transcending the physical, going through the processes that it outlines in the book in order to achieve the new heaven and the new earth. Chapter 21 in the book of Revelation. And the Jerusalem coming down as a bride prepared. Right? The new Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the habitation of peace. So we have a new habitation of peace. We go deeper into an awareness of the peace that's within us. Doesn't matter what's going on around outside of us. There can be war and chaos and everything going on, but we can be at peace inside of ourselves. We can be happy, healthy, whole, and free, just as God created us to be, no matter what's going on outside of us. Right? We understand life in this new and different country of perpetual ecstasy. Now, metaphysics. Unity is about metaphysics. And a lot of people still don't know what that is. To me, unity metaphysics is frameworks for understanding. Okay? So like the 4 functions of consciousness, where there's, the 12 powers of man, the 7 churches in the book of Revelation, the 7 days of creation, all the different sevens, the many numbers. These are frameworks for understanding the divine in human terms, the absolute in relative terms. And so realizing that the Christ is a framework for understanding our true nature beyond this fleshly existence to a spiritual or an energy, if you will. And I think I'm probably going way over here, but so let's bring this home. Let's just bring this home and say, I'm going to ask for Karen and to give me a hand since she's the newbie. I'll get her to busy here handing out. There's some cards right there on the table. I want to make sure everybody has a card. And these are the affirmation cards. For our affirmation for today, I am the expression of God, the pressing out, right? That's what expression means, to press out. So we are God pressing out into this physical existence. I am the expression of God, shining in the reflection of God love. Shining. I got that from Course in Miracles. I don't know if anybody's a Course in Miracle student. Shining in the reflection of God love. Right? Because God love is what holds up this universe. God is love. I am complete and healed and whole just as God created me to be. So we want to take these ideas out with us and to hold on to this idea and look for that wholeness. Express the wholeness. Be the wholeness. Let's take this affirmation together. I am the expression of God, shining in the reflection of God love. I am complete and healed and whole, just as God created me to be. And a second time, like you mean it together. I am the expression of God, shining in the reflection of God love. I am complete and healed and whole, just as God created me to be. And a third time, soft and with deep meaning together. I am the expression of God, shining in the reflection of God love. I am complete and healed and whole, just as God created me to be. And so it is. Yea, God. We got one more song, a nice high energy song to send us out here feeling good. And this, one thing I like to say about this, that this song reminds me about the fact that today is a reflection of our thoughts and ideas and actions of yesterday, and tomorrow will be a reflection of our thoughts and words and actions of today. And so what we got is today, and we don't want to stop thinking about tomorrow, but thinking about today. Does that make sense? All right, here's the song.